Hello, welcome back to the channel. Wow, what a Six Nations it was, eh? I think it was one of my favourite ones that I've seen in recent times. Very, very competitive, and I think we saw a good balance of older players kind of reaching their peak, as well as younger players being given their chance post-World Cup, as a lot of teams look to develop the talent that they have from within and build a team for the future. Obviously, Italy won 2 games. That's a very rare occurrence. Wales, obviously, a bit of not a poor showing, but, they're in a bit of turmoil. I think they tried as hard as they could. And Ireland looked undefeatable until their last couple of games. So I think this was probably the most competitive competition we've had in a long time. It inspired me to create a list of the Rugby Illuminati favourite 15. So this list is not, let's not get this confused, okay? Let's not go up in arms about this selection. This is my favourite team from the Six Nations. This is not, by any stretch of the imagination, the best players in their position. I think it'll be obvious when I go through a few of them. But this is a team of players that I love to watch playing, and that's it, really. It's filled with a couple of old heads in there because of how they're doing in their career, and it's also filled with some young guns that are coming up and really making a name for themselves. So, without further ado, let's get into the most important positions on the pitch, and that's the front row. And number 1. We have Andrew Porter. Now, contrary to what I've just said, I think Andrew Porter is probably the best in his position in the Six Nations. Cyril Baille may be competing with him. I'd take Andrew Porter over Cyril Baille on his current form. But Andrew Porter is also my favourite to watch. I think he really kind of epitomises what the modern prop needs to be, both a very, very capable scrummager, as well as also being great in the loose. And his celebrations that he does every time he wins a scrum are also pretty epic as well. There's not much more to say about him. He's great. He's really good to watch. Great in the loose, great in the tight, and he's kind of he is the modern version of what the prop has to be. There's not many occasions you see him getting caught out in defence where there's a weak point. He's good all round. So yeah, that's why he's there.
And I looked at him sort of hoping for a bit of advice, and he went, what have you done? And I sort of don't know really, because it just sort of happened.
So at hooker, he's actually someone who got removed from his starting team for the last game of the Six Nations, and that's Peato Mauvaka. He came into the World Cup and he got my attention for playing hooker for France. And the reason that I like him so much is because he's very much like this rare breed of hooker that we see nowadays, where they're just silky smooth at running the ball that I love. I mean, biggest examples of this back in the day was Scott Brits. Now, Mauvaka doesn't move like Scott Brits does. They have different running styles. Scott Brits is very much kind of like that, more that fast twitch, able to change direction very quickly. Mauvaka just has this kind of way of running with the ball that he's kind of like a silkworm, just kind of finds angles, and his hands are great, much like Scott Brits's were. But yeah, in terms of a hooker that can, throw it around and act like a back rower as well, or, even a poor man's centre, I think that's probably a bit of a stretch. But yeah, I love seeing hookers that can play like this. I think it really comes down to these days, can you do the scrummaging great? Can you do the line-out throwing great? That's a minimum. But then the thing that really separates hookers, in my opinion, from the absolutely superb to watch and just great hookers is their ability for ball carrying. A bit of a side note, I think Dan Sheehan also kind of enters this category. I prefer Mauvaka's running style. Dan Sheehan's probably the best at the moment in the Six Nations. Theo Dan, I think when he gets given a chance, he's going to tear it up as well. I mean, I've been watching him for Saracens when he comes on, and he's very good with ball in hand. It's just obviously Jamie George is the captain of England, and he hasn't had that much of a chance in the Six Nations. So Mauvaka is my selection at hooker. Number 3, the tight head prop. Most important position. Laugh all you want, but this is taken up by the greatest athlete on the team, and that is Stone Cold Dan Cole. I'm going to be honest with you, right? Dan Cole is a great prop, but if you had said to me at his beginning of his career that Dan Cole was going to get over 100 caps in his England career, I probably would have doubted you. He's not the biggest guy in the world. He's had a fused neck surgery, I believe, throughout his career, so meaning that his neck's probably not as strong as when he first started. But his technique scrummaging wise is just like elite. Like, he's not one of these. He's not like Antonio, where he's like one of these giant tight head props that kind of relies on size. His technique is perfect in terms of scrummaging, and it's keeping people like Will Stewart out of the team just because it's sensational. You know, that he's got everything down. His back is straight, his hips are back, he has good leverage from his knees so that he can get good drive. He really is, he plays the tight head position in terms of scrummaging incredibly well. And how can we forget his charge down tackle in the Ireland game? Was it the Ireland game? It was the Scotland game, wasn't it? I think it was the Scotland game. Second rows. First of all, it's got to be Joe McCarthy for me. Sensational addition to this Ireland team that was already incredibly strong. Just for context, Joe McCarthy's come in and kept he's kept James Ryan out, who was a Leinster all-star, always had he's had a very decorated career, and he's also kept out Ian Henderson, who's a British and Irish Lion, which is sensational for a new guy to come into the team and do that. He won man of the match in basically his first start for the team. There's something about him that's just very... He's kind of got a Will Skelton quality about him, and you'll notice that the other second row I pick will also have that same quality, where for such a big man, his physicality and his work around the park is sensational. You know, there's a lot of great second rows out there that are like grafters. You know, they'll put in a lot of work that you won't see. I'm thinking like George Martin, right? That's probably a great example of that. Ty Byrne is probably the same, where these guys are invaluable to your team. But Joe McCarthy has the scrummaging ability, but on top of that, he's causing turnovers. His ball and hand carrying is sensational. Really looking forward to what Joe McCarthy's career holds for himself and for all of us to watch in the future. Really sensational start to his career for Ireland. So yeah, he's on this list.
Do you find something comical about my appearance when I'm driving my automobile?
Yeah.
Everyone needs to drive a vehicle, even the very tall.
So I hinted similar qualities to Will Skelton. Posolo Tuilagi. Now, he didn't get much game time in the Six Nations, but the bits that I saw, this young man who's obviously, I think he's the nephew of Manu Tuilagi. I'm just going to Google that just to check. Yeah, he is. I believe he's 19 years old, just looking at this here. Yeah, so he's got a huge career ahead of him. But again, he's got that Will Skelton ability, a different Will Skelton ability, where he's just so large that, one, he can overpower people in terms of running at them, and he also just can, like, if someone tries to tackle him, he can just wrap himself around them and just offload the ball, which is just next level. I'm really excited to see what we get from Tuilagi in the future. Obviously, this is just the start of his career. He's obviously 19 years old, so didn't get a huge amount of game time, but for the bits and pieces that I watched him, I was like, man, this guy stays healthy, he's going to have a great career. So really looking forward to see what he has for the future as well.
Hey, Bad Dad. I didn't hear no bell. I'm the best around. Get a better helmet.
So we've just talked two young guns coming into the teams for the first time and kind of impressing everybody. Going into number 6, we're going to go the opposite direction and talk about an old guy that's still doing it large. I mean, Peter O'Mahony is just sensational what he does. A line-out specialist, I think does probably a lot of dirty work in rucks and mauls. He can be a bit of a turnover machine, a great tackler. Obviously has the leadership qualities as well. He is sensational. He's very much, in my mind, like kind of out of that like Alan Quinlan mold where, God, he's a... You know, if you're playing an opposite team, he's a bastard. Like, he is just like all over the place. You know, he's everywhere that he shouldn't be. He's right on the borderline of the rule book, but he's mostly on, in terms of the referee's eyes, the right side of it, so he gets away with it. He's just a nuisance, slowing down the ball. Yeah, he's sensational. And again, he might be retiring after this Six Nations. Who knows? Maybe by the time this video is released, he is. So I have to say he was just as good, I think, as he was in the World Cup. He is one of my favourite players to watch, and yeah, I'll be looking forward to seeing him keep playing for Munster as time goes on.
Every day, Jackal goes out looking for a fresh meal when it's available.
Number 7. Number 7 is not actually someone who plays 7 as a starting position, but did move there in terms of when substitutions happened. So I kind of fandangled this guy being inside the team because I had someone else at 8 that I wanted to bring in. This is Ben Earl. Now, Ben Earl at 7, well, the reason I kind of had to force him into this team. Back when I was talking about the World Cup, and I made a video about what my favourite team was coming out of the World Cup compared to what was I think they did like the best 15 or something. Some, talking head made some sort of team about that or whatever. I put Ben Earl on my bench for that team, and really during this Six Nations, he's just gone from strength to strength. His ball carrying, just kind of not out of nowhere. I mean, he's always been a solid carrier, but he's now developed over the Six Nations this ability to make the first the first defender miss, and that's what you really want for a number 8. You always want him to make sure they're getting over the gain line and setting up your team for quick ball. Thinking of other great 8s that do this really well is, Jasper Wiese is probably the first one that comes to mind. Sebastian Jabal back in the day, peak Jabal did this. He would always kind of break that first tackle and get over the gain line. So he's been really good at doing 7 stuff as well. So that's why I've justified putting him in here. His tackling's great. He's a turnover machine. He jackals constantly, even playing in that 8 shirt. And it is, even though England have Sam Underhill at that 7 shirt, he is kind of like having another 7 on the pitch in terms of that turnover ability as well. So another great series of international performances for Ben Earl. Goes from strength to strength. Looks really good. Can't wait to see what his future is for England as well. I believe he's only in his he's in his 26th year. I think he's 26. I'm just going to check that. Yeah, so he's got plenty of career left in him. So yeah, a few years left of this guy, and yeah, can't wait to see what he does. So as I said, I had to make way for this number 8. Now, some people may look at me and think like, what the hell are you doing with this selection? But there were glimpses, I think, for me, where this player really kind of epitomised the position. And he is the only Welsh player within this squad that I've chosen, and that is Aaron Wainwright.
What?
Now, other than obviously the kind of ridiculous hairstyle with the peroxide hair and the moustache, he kind of set himself out from the competition in other ways. When play gets loose, his running ability is sensational. He has great offloading and handling skills. And this is something that I really think that Wales in general need to work on in terms of like how they're going to attack oppositions. They need to be better at creating plays where there's broken play and then they can accelerate through those gaps and stuff, because that's when they look really good. They need to get better at clearing out, obviously, to get more quick ball. But they can create situations with chaos where players like Aaron Wainwright can take advantage of this. I saw specific occasions, especially in the Scotland game, where play was broken up and he was really instrumental in terms of getting like tries or getting large amounts of gain yards. Kind of like has the potential to be, in my head, like a poor man's Pierre Spies. So please bear in mind what I just said before that, poor man's Pierre Spies. Don't think he's that yet at all in any way, shape or form, but he has got pace and great running ability. So looking forward to see if he can keep continuing with Wales and the Dragons, to see if he can kind of build on what I thought was a solid kind of introduction into World Rugby. Don't believe he was really played much in the World Cup. Could have egg in my face by not getting that right, but yeah, Aaron Wainwright at number 8.
Hey, thanks a lot for hooking me up with Elmo. Yeah, that was a blast.
Number 9, scrum half. So there's a few selections here, but there was one I think that I really wanted to put in who had kind of like a late bloomer Six Nations, and that is Nolann Le Garrec. kind of really, when he was selected, he kind of revolutionised that French attack from what was very kind of pedestrian, lackluster, creativity, struggled to kind of finish off plays and get tries. Le Garrec came in and just changed the whole situation with that. The guy is 21 years old. He plays for Racing 92. I watched him in the small amount of time that he played for Racing 92 in the Champions Cup. I haven't been watching too much of the top 14, and I was begging for him to kind of come in and start from France from the get-go. Who knows, maybe if he did, we could be talking about France having a very different competition. Obviously, there were some of the defensive woes that can't be covered by putting in more and more attack, but maybe we're talking about France in a different light if Nolann Le Garrec gets to start right from the beginning. He's a great player. He's kind of like a poor man's Antoine Dupont. He has a creative spark. He can get the offense going. Very much suits what France want to do with having the scrum half dictating the pace of play and also the decision making as well. Really excited to see what he does for Racing 92 in the future as well as France. Obviously, we've now got Owen Farrell going over to Racing 92. I think them being paired up together is really exciting for them. And once Farrell's over there, I mean, Racing 92 could maybe compete this year in the Champions Cup, maybe not, don't know. Next year, watch them out if both of those guys stay healthy, especially with some of the weapons they've got, as I'm thinking of Arndell in there as well. They've got a lot of good players. They could really compete in the Champions Cup next year with a solid fly half play as well. So really excited for him and what his career is.
No problem. So you're in charge around here, is that fair to say? Absolutely. I'm the boss. Okay, so take us through a day in the life of the boss.
Number 10. Now, this is a perfect example for where these are players that are my favourites rather than the best available. Paolo Garbisi. I mean, I've sung sea poems about this guy throughout the Six Nations. I've really enjoyed his style of play. He has such acceleration that he can take the ball at a standing start and still get over the gain line by just having an acceleration and pace like that where he can just change it. I think he had a real good boss and organisation over the Italian attack as well. We saw it being a lot more organised than it has been in years past. Granted, he had a bit of an armchair ride with the two centres that he had, who both played very, very well. Melancello and I can't remember the name of the other guy. But both of them big bruiser guys that can really release you, can release a lot of pressure in terms of your ability to attack. Kind of a comp for that, for me, would be Marcus Smith having Andre Esterhazy in Harlequins. Great to have that release valve of someone very physical who can get you over the gain line if your options are tight. But that, you know, he has been given those as tools. But we saw some great things from him. Some of his kicking out of hand was sensational. Some of his lines that he chose and decision-making in terms of where to go with passing and changing the point of attack. Really exciting stuff. And again, another young guy that has got a long career ahead of him. Believe he's at Toulon, which is interesting because they've obviously got Dan Bigger there. And those are two very different style fly halves. So I don't know whether they'll maybe try to utilise both of them, especially coming off the back of this Six Nations, and Garbisi's talents have been there for everyone to see. It'll be interesting to see how Toulon kind of move going forward. Bigger obviously will add more control to the game. Garbisi is more of like a wild card that you can play to get the offense moving. So interesting for him and how his career develops. And again, another young dude who's got a big career ahead of him. So really exciting stuff. Number 11, we've had a lot of young guys kind of like rolled off in all the positions now. One of the older veterans that, to be honest with you, probably still has a good few years left in his career. I mean, I don't know how you can pick anybody else here. Duhan van der Merwe is sensational. I mean, his hat-trick against England was so good. Some of the tries he scored and some of the runs he's had are just, you know, once he gets up to full pace, he's a scary man. I mean, the dude's tall, and when he gets up to full speed, it just feels like if you tackle him, you're probably going to be concussed for like 3 weeks. I mean, Jesus Christ, dude, this guy's massive. His running style as well is so good. I've talked about this in videos before where he has this ability to, at his size, have the amount of turning circle that he needs just to get good angles on people, that he can just kind of take a line, defenders here, and then all of a sudden change it like this and then just outpace a defender. Someone I talked about earlier on this, Ben Earl, he did that to Ben Earl when he was out in space and just made him look like he was like a tight head prop and, you know, lost in coverage. I mean, it was really sensational to watch. And, you know, he's 29 now, I think, kind of getting close to his 30s, but to be honest with you, he's probably still got a good few years left in the tank. And yeah, looking forward to seeing what else he can do in the future. Number 12, again, probably someone who wasn't the best inside centre, but personal favourite of mine because I'm so happy with how his Six Nations turned out, especially for the performances that he's been putting in at club level. Is starting to finally now match up with what he's doing at an international level, and that's Ollie Lawrence. Ollie Lawrence probably had a bit of a slow start coming into the Six Nations. He was injured at the beginning. I think it was a calf or a hamstring injury, something like that. And then his first game back wasn't the best. But I mean, when someone comes back from injury and they come in and they start straight away, I'm always a bit suspect of that. I've spoken to my dad about this, and he's of the belief that they should be, you know, they should be having a warm-up game, or I don't really think there's the position in that in the modern game anymore. But I think at the very minimum, they shouldn't be starting. I'm thinking of Gary Ringrose for Ireland. He wasn't just thrown straight back in the team as soon as he came back. Obviously, Henshaw had been playing very good and very well for them. But after that first game of him coming back and looking a little bit off the pace, Ollie Lawrence has really been sensational in these Six Nations. His attack and defence, he's never really looked out of spots that often. One occasion with Scotland, he was caught a little bit flat-footed. But to be honest with you, I'm just really happy that his performances against Ireland and France to finish off the Six Nations really kind of showed everybody who was looking on a global stage what he's been doing for Bath. He's really, really good, especially this season. He's a pace setter in terms of like keeping the game going. He's there for support lines. He does some very powerful running, which is obviously his marquee kind of talent, right? But he's not just that. His handling's great. Where he attacks the line is always, you know, ideal. So yeah, I'm putting him in there mainly just because I'm just happy to see what he's been doing.
Knowledge is knowing that a tomato is a fruit. Wisdom is knowing not to put it in a fruit salad.
13, if you watch my last video, you know who this is going to be. It's Huw Jones. Really, really exciting player to watch. Has great acceleration, picks great lines. Yeah, even against Ireland, he managed to find gaps when there were none. So he has that like running ability where he just kind of like can just like run like take a shift to the left very quickly and then accelerate through that gap. I've seen that a few times in his running style. I love seeing that, just kind of creating space out of nothing. Yeah, he had a great Six Nations. And yeah, hopefully he keeps playing well when he plays in domestic rugby. The other winger, again, this is just a favourite of mine in terms of running style, Monty Ioane. He's got that fast twitch step in his feet, can change direction very quickly. Sometimes you maybe feel like he should be making more breaks than he does. I don't know why that doesn't really occur. I'm not like a massive backs expert. Maybe one of you can tell me why he doesn't always get the breaks that he does, but he just has that ability just to kind of like change direction on like a flip of a coin. And yeah, his running style is like Energizer Bunny. Like his legs feel like they're just moving like faster than anybody else's. And yeah, I think he's not the youngest. Yeah, he's 29, right? So he's kind of a known element of what he does, but I still really enjoy watching him. And to be honest with you, I wanted to at least add in one more Italian player into here. It was either going to be this, it was going to be the open side flanker, and that was taken by Ben Earl. So yeah, he's inside the squad for that reason. And finally we come to fullback. So fullback, I don't think there was anybody that really kind of particularly took my eye. Like, Hugo Keenan is obviously very good. I like his style of play, but I don't know, he's not one that I'm kind of like, I get excited to watch what he does massively. I know he's very, very good. And if it was who's a best player kind of list, probably is in there. Thomas Ramos, yeah, he was been very good, but then they kept playing him at 10 after Jalabert got injured. I think if maybe he stayed at 15, I probably would be picking him in this position, but kind of like dissolved out of my head towards the end of the tournament, and I may be having some recency bias with my selection. Blair Kinghorn, yeah, maybe. Welsh guy, maybe. Don't know. Italian, there was a couple of guys in there. They kind of rotated with the quick winger, Carpazio, I can't remember his name, and Pani came in for the last game. For me, and I know he only played one game in terms of like one game really well, but for me, I'm really excited for George Furbank. He was originally kind of brought into Eddie Jones's squad in England, and he didn't really kind of wow anybody. He kind of was in there. He played some games. He came off the bench, and then he kind of like was out of favour when Eddie Jones left, and he's now come back. I think because Borthwick wants to be able to have a possession style rugby style as well as also a defensive style that he can have through Freddie Stewart, and that's what Furbank gives him. I'm just really happy that he managed to come in for that Ireland game and he played sensationally well. I think Scotland, got a bit of a bad rap for his performances. Yes, there was some stupid knock-ons that just, he can't make mistakes like that, but I think he made a massive bounce back with the Ireland game, and I'm happy for him. I think he's made some real advancements in his career. I love his running style as well. He's very, very quick. He attacks the line in the right places as well. So and he's also been playing really well for Northampton from what I've been watching. So he's kind of really deserved this. And yeah, I'm excited to see what he can do in the future of his career. Well, that's it for me. That's the team. That's the 15. Let me know what your comments are. If you've got anybody else that you want to be putting in rather than what I've put in. I can definitely think of a few players that, you can only make a 15. You can't make a 30 or, there's like 2 players at every position. So please leave your favourite players in the comments. Tell me why. Tell me who to watch in the future. Back in the day, I did a video on like Ireland's fly halves, and I mentioned like who's going to make it. Like Pendergast was one that someone mentioned, and from that I've tried to make a note of watching him when he comes on. So if you know somebody that's coming in through your team and you tell me, yo, Rugby Illuminati, watch this dude, then tell me about him, and I'll keep an eye on him and see what's going on. But yeah, that's the list, to be honest with you. It's been a fun Six Nations, and I've really enjoyed it. So I hope you have too. Anyway, that's it for me. I'll catch you on the next one.